I could tell you do this, this, and this. Buy that, that, and that. But I don't think that that'd be the best way, since we all have different soil types, climates, available time, and budget. Instead, I want to talk about gardening practices and give you insight so you can find your own way and adapt to your current situation, so you can also get great results. Most of the tips I'm going to talk about can be applied to most garden plants, but some things are more specific to hostas. So I want to talk about two little sayings that I've come across. First, I want to talk about the saying which applies to hostas particularly. The first year they sleep, the second year they creep, and the third year they leap. And to my experience, that's pretty true for most hostas. So don't expect to have a big burst of growth in the first year. That's perfectly normal. The other says that if you have a budget of $3, the first dollar should be to buy a plant and the other two should be spent to make it happy. To me, this means to put in the effort to try to give it optimal growing conditions. If you're watching this, I think you're looking for ways to grow your hosta faster and better, more healthy, but chances are it's because you want a huge hosta of your own. So I think I need to elaborate on that. Right now you're looking at hosta seeds, and the reason I'm showing you this is because I want to make it clear that hosta seeds are not true to their type. In other words, if you plant the seed, you will probably get a green mid-size hosta, but you might get something totally different, a whole new hosta that's never been seen before. This greatly contributed in creating a lot of new varieties, from tiny to enormous. Take your pick. In other words, if you want a giant hosta, you have to buy a hosta that has the potential of becoming huge. So you have options. You could either go online and do a search, or you could go to a garden center and try to find one like that. But this could be very deceiving because look at this one. This is a T-Rex that I just bought. It looks tiny, but if you read the label, this hosta could be as high as 3 feet tall or close to, and 6 feet wide. So this is going to become a huge hosta. So you found a hosta you like. You finally come home with it. Now what? When I first started gardening, they told us to dig a hole slightly deeper and wider than the plant you're trying to plant. Use some of the existing dirt to mix in a handful of bone meal and mix that in the bottom of the hole. Put your plant in, backfill with the existing dirt. Proceed into stepping all around the plant to make sure that there was no air, and then water thoroughly. Then a few years later, the garden center started encouraging us in buying shrimp compost, saying that would be better. So we started doing that. And then I took my horticulture class, and they were talking about soil compaction and water retention and soil amendment, and they suggested Actisol hen manure, which is a organic fertilizer. So all this to say that over the years, certain practices have been just changed, like our gardening styles and the available things just keep on evolving. So this is why at the beginning of the video I was saying that I want to talk about gardening practices, and I don't want to tell you do this and that, because I feel like it would be hypocrite of me to think that there's only one way of doing things. But I want to give you some insights, make you think about certain things so that you look at your gardening a different way and you could evolve with the times, evolve your practice. So let's take a look at a few products. So first of all, fertilizer just feeds your plant, whereas soil amendments will actually change the structure of your soil. Let's first take a look at bone meal. Bone meal takes a little time to break down before it starts releasing its nutrients, it needs to be mixed into the soil. So you could get benefits up to 4 months. Some of those benefits are overall plant health, and it also encourages root development. But it does take a slightly acidic soil to be able to break it down, and it also could attract small animals that could just smell it and start digging up your flower beds. So for all those reasons, I think other things could do a better job without all the negatives. So in my opinion, not worth it. Now let's take a look at Actisol. It's pure hen manure, so it's 100% natural, and it's slow release. I find it's super easy to use because it's pellets. It's not like dirt. It's approved for organic culture. It repels animals, so it's even good for your spring bulbs, and it could last up to 2 months. So in my opinion, it's a winner. I use this stuff all the time. Let's take a look at amendments now. There's sea compost, there's sheep manure, there's cow manure, there's your own personal compost, there's shrimp compost, which is currently what I use because if you look at what it says shrimp based. So when you buy a bag of compost, there's multiple things in there. And one of the things is peat. You see it says excellent for moisture retention, which is a great thing for us. This is currently what I use. I recently moved and I got a bigger property, so I want to start making my own compost, and I'll let you know how that goes. But for now and for the last few years, this is what I've been using, and it's just great. So to me, compost is one of the best things you could do for your hostas. We'll say the biggest bang for your buck. I'll explain to you why I'm saying this. Let's just say your soil is super hard and you feel like you would need a jackhammer to go through it. It's just super hard to dig through. What's the solution? Organic matter. On the other side of the spectrum, let's just say that put your shovel in the dirt and it's like butter. It just goes in like super easy. It's very sandy. Well, the solution is organic matter because your soil is probably very poor and it doesn't retain any humidity. In either case, the solution is organic matter. And what is organic matter? Well, compost, right? I'm showing you roots right now because I really want you to think about that. That's where it all starts. If your roots, if you can't dig through the soil, imagine how your roots are struggling to have a better root system, to grow bigger. If they don't have proper roots, they won't make nice leaves, right? If they work together. Also, I want you to think, if you want an athlete to bring home gold medals, well, you have to feed it more than water and crackers. So you need to feed them in some way. So it's a question of getting the right balance. Enough moisture retention, like not too compacted, and available nutrients. So all this works together to help your plant be able to reach those nutrients and stay nice and turgescent. Let me show you what I mean. These 3 hostas were planted at the same time. This one, and then the next one, not the yellow one. So on the left, there's about 3-4 inches of fresh soil, but on the right, it eroded and that nice fresh dirt is gone. So what happened is that the hostas on the right, they got the compost and everything at first, so they did okay, they survived, they come back every year. But because the soil is so shallow and dry and poor, because there's a tree there, so the tree obviously took all the nutrients, they're just barely surviving. Whereas this one is thriving. It's about 3 or 4 times the size, and this is only about maybe 2-3 years later. I think that experiments tells us that dirt is the most important factor. So when you're planting, prepare the soil and make a much bigger hole than the plant size. And your plant depth should be at least 30 centimeters, about 1 foot. So work all that soil and put in fresh amendment, whatever compost you have, fertilizer. I even use potting mix, just a handful, whether it's Miracle Grow or Pro Mix, whatever you have on hand. You could even use just peat moss just to lighten up your soil to make it easier for root development. In the fall, I don't do anything. I leave my hostas the way they are. I even put in leaves on the beds. In the spring, it gives me a chance to get to my beds. It acts as a mulch. So I leave that there and then I remove that and I clean up. So then when I see little spikes coming out, the hostas start growing, I always put hen manure, just a handful, and a handful of compost right on. I sprinkle it right on the head of the hosta because I've had groundhogs just eating. It's like a salad festival for them because in the spring the food is a little bit more scarce, so they were just eating the tips, and that really worked. They don't eat them anymore. Also, if you want, every couple of years, I'm not saying to do this every year, but every 2-3 years, you could always dig a trench around the root system and really work that soil in, add more compost again. Or if you don't have the budget to do that, just make sure that your soil is nice and loose, and you could even add, like say, a handful of grass clipping or a handful of broken up leaves that could break down in the soil and help you build up a nice soil on a budget. What about mulch? Well, mulch, if you could only put an inch or less, then it's basically just ornamental. But if you could put 2 to 3 inches, then it's actually gonna make it harder for weeds to grow, so less deweeding, and it's gonna help reduce evaporation of water, so it's gonna keep it more humid, which is the next thing I want to talk about: water. When it comes to watering, my strategy is more of a conservative strategy. I would prefer watering thoroughly, hold that water for a few seconds to make sure that it's well watered instead of watering a little bit every day. Again, we want to encourage roots to grow deep so that if there's a water shortage or you're absent for a few days, your plant can handle it. The best seasons to transplant a hosta or to even plant a hosta would be in the spring or in the fall. Why? Because the ground is already moist. There's a lot more precipitations in those seasons, especially for us in zone 5. There's melting of the snow, so the ground is just more humid, the air is less hot. It's perfect. But if you choose to divide a hosta during the summer, then you're gonna have no choice but to water it every day for at least, say, 2-3 weeks. So they say part shade to shade. So the best situation would be dappled sun, right? Where you're getting some little pockets of sun and the sun is just beaming through the dancing leaves, so the hosta doesn't get like full-on beams of sun that just burn it. Yellow hostas do need some sun to stay yellow, otherwise they turn chartreuse. So morning sun is great for that because it's not too hot yet and there's still humidity in the air from the night. So perfect situation. Blue hostas, on the other hand, do very good in shade because if they get too much sun, the blue will turn green. Some hostas will tolerate full sun, but you just gotta make sure that you water them a little more. Well, that sums it up. I hope you found it interesting. I didn't want to make it too long, so I want to make a part 2 where I'm going to talk about hosta growth patterns, how they grow, and give you a little list of hostas that grow really large to save you some of the research. So stay tuned for that. If you have your own sayings or tips and tricks or a favorite product you like, it'd be really fun if you could share that with us. Bye for now.